Welcome back to Cap Report After Hours. We are here, and you know, on eBay, I go find these things on eBay all the time. Political memorabilia. So guess what else I found? It wasn't on eBay, but Sam Gejdenson joins us, the former congressman from the 2nd District, who was there for 20 years. Yes. Right? Had a great career, and it's great to see you back on set. We're all just going to kick around and ask you a bunch of questions. How has Congress changed in 20 years?
You know, Lee Hamilton, who had been in Congress since 1965, said to me at one point, you know, Congress has gotten more honest, more sober, and meaner every year. And I think that has happened for a number of reasons. One, money. Long before Citizens United, when you compare the amount of money for an open Senate seat or even an incumbent running again, or a House seat, it's millions of dollars, and it distorts the political process. The other thing is you guys are less relevant than you used to be. There's now so many different sources of information and so much money that each candidate has. So in the old days, if I said my opponent came from Mars, on the nightly news you would say, that's ridiculous, Gejdensen's lost his mind. And if I ran 1 or 2 ads, I couldn't compete with it. Now, I can come in with $10 million, and when I'm finished, my opponent's mother will wonder if he came from Mars. So,
but isn't it also, Sam,
it's the amount of money.
But it's also time, which is the most precious thing in the world, right? So the time you have as a congressman, so if you're not in there are too many committees. So you're a congressman, you're on 5 or 6 committees, 10 subcommittees. You can't get to all of that, much less read the papers.
And then calling 3 hours a day for
Then
money.
you're down at the House, you know, campaign committee dialing. Then you got a reception
it's a distortion
in
of
the
whole
evening,
process.
and then maybe, if you're from the East Coast, you get back to your district to go to a Boy Scout thing. By that time, no wonder they're angry at each other. They get no sleep. They got no time.
No, and to some degree, the public is at fault here because they'll believe anything. If you look at gubernatorial races in our previous history in this state, Lowell Weicker, who I really like, moderate Republican, good guy, ran for a governor saying, I'll never be for an income tax. It'd be like pouring kerosene on a fire. Gets elected, appoints Bill Siebes his chief financial officer, and bingo, the first thing they do is the income tax, which they had no choice about. The next person that ran, John Rowland, said, you know, there are all these bottles and cans that aren't returned. And if I'm elected government, I'm going to get that money and I'm going to repeal the income tax. Well, the income tax is still here. So the public keeps responding to people who give them BS as an answer for the problems. I think part of the reason is humans aren't really good with change. So if you look at, my father bought a dairy farm in eastern Connecticut in 1950 or 51. If we brought a farmer from 1750 to my father's farm, it would have taken him about a minute to get used to the changes. Half the equipment we used, or maybe all of it, had registered in patent numbers of the 17 or 1800s. Today, the rapid change has dislocated so many people, and the competition from China and India with massive populations have changed the economic landscape in a way. Every person I knew as a kid, my father was a dairy farmer, everybody else worked at Pratt & Whitney, Electric Boat, or similar places. Their fathers worked, white men, for other white men. None of them worked for a black man or a Hispanic. Certainly none of them had a woman supervisor. Now they look at a world where your skills are good for 4, 5, 6 years, and then they're gone. You've got to update. Just think of the computers we've gone through, or phones we've gone through. And all of a sudden, they look at the map, and they're on their 5th job. They're worried about the skills for the next job, and they're now working for a minority or a Hispanic.
But Congress still operates the same way.
So I have a question for you. Are you glad that you were not in office when the advent of social media happened? And what do you think the impact of social media has been?
It's not been positive necessarily. It still has the potential to be positive. But if if you look at it, one of the problems is you read things online now, and even I've got some history, and I read books, and I read 4 or 5 newspapers a day. I'm not sure if what I'm reading is true when I look at it online. It might be entertaining, but I don't know that.
And how do you think that has played into the overall civility from when you were in office to now?
I think the reapportionment and the money issues have been more damaging, because if you look at what happens when the Republicans have been much better at doing reapportionment. The Democrats win the House by about 2.5 million, 3 million votes, but lose the majority. Why? They've done a good job at electing governors, state legislatures, and reapportionment. When you have a reapportioned district where everybody has 80–90% of their own constituents, it shoves the primary to the right and has gotten rid of. I mean, I used to serve in the State House with Al Mazzola from Willimantic. Occasionally we'd fight because there were ideological differences, and we'd fight hard. Then we go have dinner.
That's right.
And other times we were together because I had Norwich, he had Willimantic, I had Boston, Colchester too, but we had similar constituents.
So Sam, here's the question. We're talking off air that you still hay your fields in Basra. You know, the second district. There was an article that we referenced a few weeks ago. It's Trump country out there. And if you listen to Lee Elsey, so you must walk around like an alien out there.
No, even when I was in the House, I actually did better in the places you wouldn't suspect. Higher education, higher income, I did better. Poorer people, I did worse often. Because they believe, you know, the myths have worked. Let me give you an example. The new bill that they're proposing for immigration. You know, those people like that. Right. They think that's their problem.
Speak English.
Yeah. Steve Jobs. Father was from Syria. He wouldn't have got in under that bill. Just get rid of all your iPhones and iPads immediately. If you look at the vibrance of the American economy, it's because we've had a relatively open door. Japan's tried the other approach. You can't get into Japan. Their immigration policy virtually non-existent. Japan's economy has been struggling for over a quarter of a century. They've tried everything. They've had negative interest rates. They've paved every square inch of the islands that they can. They still can't get the economy going. You need the vibrancy and the injection.
Right, Sam, here's your out question. How do we fix Connecticut?
I think you need to look at and pick 5 cities on the shoreline. What's our strength? The shoreline. Why did the companies leave? Not taxes, not regulation. They left because young people don't want to live here. My kids live in D.C. My wife's kid,
famous restaurateur, by the way.
Yes, doing it very
more
well.
famous than you.
He appreciated that line about
more famous than you. You Google you, your son comes up.
I'm very happy about that. But when you look at what happens to this state, they left to go to Boston, New York, because that's where young people want to live. What do we have? We have a beautiful shoreline and relatively inexpensive living. But we have to make those cities function. And I think you got to start at Stamford, because it's the closest to New York, so we can, you know, people can't. My stepson bought a house in Brooklyn. I thought he was crazy. There were nothing but rag shops around it. A couple years later, he sold it for $1.5 million profit. So it's getting too expensive in Brooklyn. It's getting too expensive in Queens. Stamford, he now lives an hour by subway in Bushwick or something outside of New York. You can go to Stamford and get there in 45 minutes. Why not? It's not a city people want to live in yet. We have to pick those 5 cities. We got to figure out how to make them attractive. I'd say if you look at Connecticut, New Haven's probably the most attractive city in the state. Restaurants, physically, you know, good to look at. That's what we got to do. My son comes back with his restaurant. He says, God, I'd love to open a restaurant in Norwich. He looks around Norwich. He says, this place is astounding. I said, yeah, it doesn't have you can't pull it together yet. We make the cities work. We will then make the suburbs work.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Hey, I think Sam, candidate for governor.
There you go. Is that one of the 2 people you were talking about?
One of these again here.
You still got game.
The great Sam Gejdenson still got game, huh?
Younger than the president.
There you go. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next week.